Many things have changed since founded in 1891, but through the growth, Royse City is still a thriving, wholesome town. The residents have embraced change for the most part, but still desire to respect the heritage and remember where we came from.
In those days, the town was really bustling. We had an opera house, a flour mill, a bottling company, a brick factory. My name is Dolores Cross Burks Ballard. I was born and raised here, and I was born in 1940, and I'm kin to just about any and everybody in Rockwall County. And I am the curator now of the museum here in Royse City, of the Zana Robinson Historical Museum. And this building was built in 1925, and it was built by Mr. J.E. Harris of Royse City. And it has a historical marker, a national marker, and a state historical marker because it's been here all those years. In this building, when I was a kid in the 40s, the front room was a city hall. You came in the front door and there was a counter and you paid your water bill, and there were two offices on the north side of the building. In this back big room at the back, there was a big double door, and the fire trucks parked in here until the late 1970s, until they built the fire station where it is now. The tile ceilings are all original, and the vents here are original. Everything in this building is original. There's none of the windows been replaced except the new ones that were done upstairs about 3 years ago, but they had to be replaced in the same style, handmade wooden frames and everything, and they were replaced. In 1904, a Mr. Mike Cookston built a hotel downtown. It was 2 stories and took up 2 blocks. It had a men's clothing store, a restaurant, and a bakery downstairs, and all the rooms were upstairs. And Mr. Cookston made bread and delivered homemade bread for a few years. The hotel was there until 1960 or 62 when there was a fire and it burnt completely down. Now on those 2 lots is Domino's Pizza and the new Cookston Court that has been revitalized.
My grandfather and grandmother that had the cafe and hotel in Royse City. It's the longest running business in the history of Royse City till this day. I believe it was 56 years in business. I think Royse City was good to my grandparents, but my grandparents were equally as good to Royse City. My name's Carol Burks. I've grown up in Royse City my whole life. My younger part of my life was spent in this hotel and cafe where Cookston Court is today. That at one time was a bakery, a bus stop, had a dry goods store next door for men's clothes, and then of course the hotel and the cafe. There's a lot of stories about how gracious my grandfather was and how he wouldn't send anybody away without eating, even if they didn't have the money to pay. Well, Royse City to me it's home. When I enter from outside the city limits and come in, I still think back in the days when this Royse City was about commerce and cotton and the railroad, and mostly all the farmers that made this town what it is. And my grandfather played a big part in that. It was the meeting place for the whole town. And so when I look back at the history, it's really sad that the grandest hotel and cafe in town got caught up in a fire that was started 3 doors down. So it means a lot. The very fabric of what Royse City is the epitome of my grandfather and grandmother. It's all about preservation and keeping the history of Royse City real so people understand what kind of community it was. My family was honored when we were told that they were going to do this court and name it after my grandparents, Cookston Court. I think that's just a wonderful honor, and I think it's really cool that on the mural on the other side of the wall there, underneath the American flag, it's got the inscription, "In God We Trust." Well, My grandmother's family, on their family crest, is without God, nothing. And I thought it wasn't planned or anything, and I thought it was ironic that that inscription was put up on the wall. My mother's 97 now, and she's been here her whole life. It's a lot of years to grow and love a place and still feel the same way you do about it. It means as much today as it did the last day I can remember as a youth, being with this hotel here before it burned. And it sure means a lot to our family that they've dedicated this to my grandfather and grandmother, Mike and Dink Cookston, and called it Cookston Court. I think it's pretty appropriate.
This is a picture of the Royse City Drugstore. It was built in 1890 by Mr. Hauser, and it stayed a drugstore until the mid-1970s. It is now Thirsty Brothers.
Yeah, the building as it stands now was built in 1920. Not sure exactly the date, but in 1920, so it's almost 100 years old. There was a wooden structure on site before that, and it's been a number of things since then. It's, you know, as people come in, the long-timers that have been around here come in, it's, I guess for almost 50 years, it was a drugstore. There used to be a soda fountain over here, and there's some of the long-term residents actually had pictures of themselves sitting when they were like 10, 11 years old, sitting at this counter. Now it's a brewery. It's been a brewery for about 3 years now, so it's got a long history and a bunch of different things. It's kind of weird when you're talking to a long time people. There's a connection to this building that they really love. I think the biggest thing was the surprise in what was actually the structure of the building. You had to go this far into the brick to actually find a good solid enough material, like hanging the TVs and all that. Because the building, you know, a 100-year-old building made of brick, and you've got three walls there, trying to find a good solid spot to anchor things. You had to go pretty deep, man. It was a surprise every time you drilled a hole, you know. And then when we put the door in over there, how do you go through 3 layers of 100-year-old brick wall and not worry about the wall caving in when you do it? You know, you see both sides of the things here in Royse City. They're amazed at what the progress is being made, you know, so the new things that are coming in, but they're also really pleased with the nostalgia and how quaint the little area is. So, you know, I think that the city is really trying to, you know, they want to see growth and they want to see progress here, but I think they're real focused on trying to keep the downtown area you know, charming and a place where people can really go and just hang out. I think they're really trying to focus on that. We've got quite a few plans too. We've done a lot to the building, trying to preserve it in a way that, you know, matches what, you know, the history of the building. We put wooden doors in, wooden and glass doors in a couple of places, and, you know, everything that we do, we try to focus in on the history of the building. We need to be functional on everything too, but we do try to focus in on what is going to maintain the building in a way that's going to keep it because so many people come in and they just can't believe the charm and the hominess of this building.
I'm Julia Bryant, and I'm the president of the Royse City Chamber of Commerce, and we're standing in front of our historic jail, which is also called a calaboose. So it's where they would hold the non-serious offenders or less serious offenders. So if someone was a vagrant, or if someone, like say, drank too much the night before, they would be put in here. Now, if a more serious offender did come along, and maybe they would bring them in on the train, and they would be brought here temporarily until they could be taken into Dallas the next morning. Our particular calaboose, which sits in Rockwall County, Royse City is in Rockwall County, was built, we say, sometime maybe between 1905 and 1911, or a little earlier than that, we're not sure. It was important for us to keep this piece of history in Royse City for others who were coming in generations to get to be a part of that, of something that had happened in the past here. We started doing a project to restore this calaboose, and it's taken a lot of the people that live here. The community has jumped in with fundraisers to donate money to try to help us. We've had some local architect give his time. We also have a gentleman who owns a granite company who has donated a lot of his time into this beautiful structure. It was important for us to keep the materials for the calaboose as accurate as possible to how they were back when it was built. So for the doors, they are a layered of steel and wood. So we're getting the steel and the wood from places that we feel like would have that type of wood that was used and the steel that was used. We take a lot of pride in our history in Royse City, and I think that our Main Street program does a great job of making sure that we do pay attention to things like that. You know, people love to tell stories about the calaboose and how back when they were kids, there's stories of them tying on rope to the windows and then tying it to the train when it would stop, and then letting the train yank the window out so prisoners could get released. And there's also like rumors or stories or myths that maybe Bonnie and Clyde were some of those criminals that were dropped here before they were able to be taken in somewhere else, but we don't know anything about that. We are getting it back to the original way it was, with 2 cells instead of 1. We're redoing the doors. Hopefully what it will do for us in Royse City is allow people to, if they're traveling on I-30, they'll see the sign that says, hey, come visit our historic calaboose. They will come by and take a look at what we have here that was a part of our history and really a part of the history of Texas.
Here in Royse City, we are extremely grateful for the state, for all the support that they provide when we need assistance in design guidelines for our buildings. And we are truly grateful for all the support that we receive from our local business owners, our citizens, from our city staff, and other civic organizations.
When I was growing up, Mother would say, be home when the streetlights come on. We could ride our bicycles all over the town. We were just like brothers and sisters, and we still are to this day. The doors were never locked. We didn't have air conditioning. The windows were always open. It was just a great time to grow up. And yes, I would go back to those days anytime, even if I had to give up the air conditioning.